So what the Internet of Things does is it allows us to take a real-time sensor, put it in the water, and then get real-time results measuring every 5 minutes and understanding what the trend analysis is and seeing differences.
Well, so that's night and day difference, isn't it? When you can get instant
100%.
data basically as often as you want,
Absolutely.
Versus what could take multiple days
or months in some cases too.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. It's good to be back. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we're with Ulrich Frueck, who is the founder of Adroit. Welcome along. Good to see you.
Thank you. I've been really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know we've talked about it for probably a reasonable period.
Yeah, it's fine. But I'm finally here, and we're a lot further forward now, so we can talk about some really cool tech stuff. So.
Yeah, so maybe just give a little intro to listeners in terms of who you are and where you fit into this big wide world of tech in New Zealand.
Yeah, okay, sure. So my name is Ulrich Frueck. I'm the founder and Chief Innovation Officer at Adroit. Adroit is an environmental testing company. We do real-time monitoring inside of rivers, lakes, streams, and construction sites. We're a leading IoT company here in New Zealand, so we specialise in the Internet of Things. So we can put sensors in the middle of nowhere and get data from them and use that to create really cool insights and understanding. That's a real short synopsis. I can go a bit.
We'll definitely delve in a bit more as we get in there. So yeah, a bit to talk about on sort of from a tech news perspective in terms of what's happening locally in New Zealand, some around the world news, and then really keen to delve into some of the fun and innovative stuff that is keeping you and the team busy at Adroit. First up. Ministry of Education, look, really good to see their guidance is now out online, and for those that are looking for that, we'll put those into the show notes for this episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. But yeah, just great to see guidance, focused on ChatGPT and generative AI for those in the world of education. So teachers and educators getting some guidance around ChatGPT and Bing and the varying other tools and the likes of Midjourney, which does some pretty mind blowing image generation and the like. So yeah, just I think it's encouraging to see that there's not just this. I think initially there was sort of concerns that it was going to be blanket bans and look, we have seen some of that, and there is a degree to which it takes time to figure out how do you respond when a new piece of technology launches today. What do you do with it tomorrow? And when an education system has been built in a particular way that doesn't account for things drop onto the scene. It creates some challenges, doesn't it?
It's been a real interesting kind of growth space, for me to watch as well from a technology perspective. It's such a clever thing. How do you detect whether it is a human written something or it's AI written something, and how do you know that it's actually really true and it hasn't made it up in the process? And there have been some examples of where ChatGPT has made stuff up that's come out of nowhere. So if you prompt it in the right way, it doesn't make it up. So you've got to know the actual, what you need to tell it to do to get to the right point.
Yeah, and are you even in the room here with me?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Is this a real person?
Yeah. So it's been really interesting for me as a learning tool. Trying to understand things in the water space a bit more. I'm not a scientist by any means, but I need to understand what I'm putting in the field. And you say, can you please tell me about this particular thing? It goes away and it actually gives you a really good synopsis. It makes you understand it a lot easier than having to go and read a 47-page paper, right? So it's definitely got some space. Maybe I won't give it to my 10-year-old, but when he's maybe 15, I'll let him have access to it, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the interesting things I saw in their guidance was around the, the age restrictions, and that, for instance, ChatGPT, in theory, you must be at least 13 years old to use it. And if you're under 18, you must have, parent or a parent or legal guardian's permission. Yep. Now, realistically, probably, if somebody jumps online, they're not necessarily going to have any awareness of that at all, because, who reads all those bits and pieces? But it is, encouraging to see that they're putting some of this guidance out there, and accepting that, look, AI tools are already in use today. And one of an educator that I spoke to a while back, in her case, one of her situations was she had been given a different class to teach the next day. She's like, I've got to prepare a lesson plan, and rah-de-rah. And I said, have a look at ChatGPT. Let's see what the technology can do for you.
Yeah.
And for a teacher that has to, organize a lot of lesson plans or a last minute lesson plan and so on, the ability of these AI tools to actually do a whole lot of work, research, whatever it is in a given circumstance can be incredibly useful.
It's a very useful thing for me. My mind is often thinking about the next idea and the next thing that exists. And what I do is I sometimes struggle to get what's in my head out onto paper into a readable form, or like a really understandable form, where I can use ChatGPT now to kind of give it a whole bunch of stuff from my head that makes no sense. And it actually turns it into something that makes a lot of sense, and other people can now understand a bit more of what's going on in my head. And it's a really useful tool for me. I've discovered a lot of stuff inside of it that's really helped me, grow to be a better, sort of chief innovation officer, to understand what's happening in the tech world. It's been a really useful tool.
Yeah, but things just move so fast, don't they?
Yeah, but also it's also scary, because sometimes it's like, how did you know about that? You know what I mean? So there are definitely some things to keep a watchful eye. What I've discovered is it's become more and more good at writing English. At the very beginning, you could detect it was immediately ChatGPT, and now you struggle to detect it's ChatGPT. You can tell it's got little things where it puts little commas and things where a human wouldn't do that, but it's definitely a lot smarter than it was a week ago. And next week it'll be even more smarter, So and then you've got the aspect of how these tools will cope with say Tereo, how are they going to sort of be fitting in to cater to a really broad range of scenarios. Obviously, at the moment there's some things they're very good at, some things not so good, some things where they completely hallucinate, and you ask for something and it just doesn't have the right source. It doesn't find an answer. So it makes one up, because they are in simple terms a prediction engine. Yep, totally
and,
right.
They predict what you may want to hear possibly. Well done to the Ministry of Education to have that up there. And there's even some guidance that they link to from NZQA specifically about reducing the risk of cheating through the NCAA, the exams.
Sure.
Just good to see that information sort of succinctly collated together. Into some, at least some guidance,
totally.
And keeping it reasonably accessible and not too complicated.
Totally. I was walking through the Auckland University campus the other day, and there was a big on the one of the boards. There was a big ChatGPT crossed out. Do not use ChatGPT. So there's obviously some educators that are starting to see it, especially around universities, right? It recently passed a medical exam over in the US. It passed the medical exam in 17 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, in terms of some of the things that we see, the technology applied to the results are quite phenomenal. But I think the key point is the results may vary, and we've certainly seen the negative scenarios. In terms of international news, lots and lots of things going on. As always, recently saw news coming through on from Google on their quantum computer tech, and this is something where we've got a number of the big players, including Google, Microsoft, IBM working away on. They've been kind of highlighting that they're kind of ahead of the pack with a recently published paper, and just how beyond the capabilities of traditional supercomputers that they've got to now. I think we've still got a road ahead when it comes to quantum computing.
Absolutely.
But if it all comes together, then it will be one of the massive disruption points.
Absolutely, it's a super interesting space. I mean, I was reading some stats yesterday. It said that a normal transaction that a normal supercomputer would take 47 years to master can be done instantly on a quantum computer. And I don't know if you've looked into the whole entanglement theory. It's now proven where you entangle two qubits together and separate them by thousands of miles, and they react exactly the same way.
It's hard to get your head around that, isn't it?
How is that possible? It's pretty cool.
Quantum entanglement, for those that want to go and look for some
entanglement
YouTube videos and content to try and explain it. Then maybe you can explain it back to me as to how it actually works, because
I don't know how it works.
It's kind of mind blowing.
It's mind blowing. But the thing is, to understand, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, at the moment, the quantum computers can take something from the internet today and store it in its power. And if it can't break the encryption today, but it breaks the encryption in 10 years, it can then go back and break all the encryption across all those things instantly, because it can break the encryption in hours, But, that kind of starts. At the moment, we're up to around 70 qubits, and they're talking about this, these things being at million qubits, being able to start breaking encryptions and stuff like that, it's where it starts getting a little bit scary, right? So...
Yeah, there's always going to be an aspect of technology that will scare us, right? And,
totally.
We usually hopefully land on the better and most appropriate uses of the technology. But,
exactly.
You can't completely control these things.
No.
As we've seen with Twitter over the last few days, Elon Musk announcing temporary limits for reading Twitter posts.
Yep.
And I think they started with unverified accounts having access to read just 600 posts a day.
Yep.
Even less if it was a new account, and then sort of 10x if you've got a verified or a paid account in terms of the amount. I think that's bumped up.
It's up to 1,000 now.
A couple of times. I think it went to 400 and 800 and 8,000. Now 10,000 posts was I think the last one that we saw. If you've got a paid account, or 1,000 posts a day.
I wonder what his actual driver behind it is. Is it to get people to be verified, or is it to actually help from a technical perspective?
Well, the bits and pieces I saw were saying that there was massive data scraping going on, and there was also a reference to system manipulation. So I'm not exactly sure what that is, but those that have been around for a really long time on Twitter might remember the Twitter fail whale, and that's kind of what used to come up when Twitter wasn't working.
The fail whale,
and it was a very, very common sight. And this was when they were, they were a big, well-known social network, but a lot earlier on in their history, and it was amazing the technical kind of challenges that they had. I remember one of their top technical team members Rafi Kikorian, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was down here for an event, and I think we've even might have had him on the NZ Tech podcast back then, and
awesome.
that was part of his job was keeping and building things out in a really kind of solid manner.
It's still such a large social media network. I mean, it's got so many users, right? And even with all the changes going on now that Elon Musk has put in, everyone's like, "Oh, Elon's the CEO. Oh, I'm not going to be on it anymore." But they're still on it and they're still using it, and it's still a really important place. I use it all the time for searching or looking up, particular influencers or tech people, especially.
Yeah, I think it's about the people, it's about the content, and to a large degree, we still find great content on there, great people. Not some people that you might not feel are so great,
exactly.
But that's the nature of social media and the ability to sort of control your feed by who you who you follow, and I think it will be interesting to maybe when Musk has been the main shareholder for a couple of years to kind of look back and see where it's actually landed, whether he's been able to turn it into a thriving and successful business from a monetary standpoint, or exactly what its role is. Other things going on. There's been chunk of criticism around the proposed European Union AI Act.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
really interesting to follow these things as governments try and put a legal framework and structure around technology. It's one of those things that is so challenging, but also if it can be done well and we get the right sort of outcomes, which of course are always open to debate, is what is the right sort of outcome and what should legislation look like around technology. But it can have a really, really important part to play, but can also completely create scenarios where it puts a stop to being able to leverage great technology. So
absolutely. And the thing that was in the sort of AI Act that I read, and I've done a little bit of reading about it, is it was quite quick. It was made very quickly in the process,
which is unusual, isn't it?
Very unusual. Like it hasn't gone through the proper process to get done. Like it hasn't been written over a 2-year period or longer. It's been written in a very, very short period of time. And there are a lot of AI experts out there that are saying that it is a little bit, it's a little bit quick. There's still no understanding of some of the technology and some of the growth inside of the artificial intelligence world, especially around the generative AI, where they're seeing exponential growth happening so quickly. So what some of the experts are saying is there should be a freeze on AI for a short period of time, so we can get our head around and understand it a little bit better, so we can put some policies and stuff in place, but policies that are spoken about with other people, with the AI experts, and not just written by a government who potentially don't really know everything yet.
One of the bits that did
bluntly say
that did jump out was a provision related to requiring that generative AI creators disclose copyright material.
Yep.
And I see some wisdom in including this, because at the moment we see whether it's Google Bard or ChatGPT and so on, these tools are able to draw from copyrighted content, often with no reference at all to the source. So there's definitely some important considerations there.
Yeah, totally.
Because look, if you don't do that and the content creators, the copyright holders aren't getting any sort of reference back, then surely at some point you get a scenario where people will just hide all their content so that AI can't get to it, which is partly one of the suggestions around what's happened with Twitter is, hey, OpenAI have turned on browsing and ChatGPT, so people are asking for stuff, and then ChatGPT's going out and browsing all over Twitter and creating a nightmare in terms of traffic for Twitter to deal with. But there's a whole lot of aspects here, I guess, to be considered. What I understand is that the European Parliament has passed the legislation, but it becomes law if and when it is ratified by each EU country.
Okay.
There's that's kind of the hold up, and probably in the meantime, they may well figure out that there are things to be fixed in the legislation, and so I think they've already done an amendment at the last minute, sort of prior to passing it. So maybe there will be more of that on a pretty regular basis.
There was a open letter written with 160 signatures from a number of different organisations to the government. I don't know what the outcome of that was.
I think that's kind of the trying to sort of stir things up and sort of maybe challenge some of the approaches that you were taking. Couple of other bits of news. Google domains shutting down.
Interesting, and transferring it to their Squarespace.
Yeah,
really
interesting. Look, we see these big companies, come up with so many things, and I think Google have to be close to the leader when it comes to new ideas, launching them, and then killing them off.
Yeah.
Which I think there's two sides to that. Look, I like the idea of of companies innovating and trying new things and coming up with new things, but I'm not super comfortable when those things get shut down. Sometimes at a pace that just sort of doesn't seem like the right thing. It's like, come on, Google, if you decided that this was something that you should launch, it's almost like they need to commit now that that's something they launch is going to stick around for, and that they give maybe a 5-year warning period or something like, with major software vendors, there's usually a window. They don't just kind of cut the software off and say, oh, look, this is going to be gone in 6 months, 12 months, etc. It's usually quite a long period of time. So to see Google shutting these things off. And the funny thing was with the Google domains, it was launched in 2014.
Okay.
Only exited beta last year in 2022. So they're like, yep, we're ready, we're live, yep, we're out of beta, we're a fully released thing.
Such a funny thing to do,
then
right?
the next year th're like, oh, sorry, this is going for the chopped. So
Interesting, but if you read some of the articles around Google, they're bringing new things to life on a weekly basis, right? They bring in so many things, and a lot of stuff doesn't come anywhere near close to being launched or as a product. But all of the products that they do bring to market, or they do bring to some kind of fruition internally, externally, is listed on one of their websites. They've got a list of almost every single one. There's thousands of them, and it's super interesting to see. I can't remember the figure, but it was like 2 or 3% of all things thought of in Google come to life, whether that's through, Google hosting services or, anything like that, It's quite a low percentage, really, you know what I mean? And I don't know what their metrics are, but, as a company, sometimes if, something is front and center and is not working, the best thing to do is to cut it. Sometimes,
it absolutely has to be done, and these things, don't always work. And I certainly like to see companies working to innovate and doing new things. We saw it with Spark, a range of things like Spark Sport. But there comes a point where you have to make a bit of a call.
Yep.
But if for instance Spark were announcing new things every 5 minutes and they were killing off other things every 5 minutes, then that creates an issue. I'm not picking on Spark, but it's something that I think these big companies have to realise that their actions, impact their reputation, and whether we have confidence in them. In the same ways with the big layoffs that we've seen across a lot of the big tech players,
absolutely right.
That has consequences, and how people feel about a business that maybe in the past they would have done just about anything for, and totally. some of these things I think have some pretty long-standing consequences.
Yeah, totally right. Absolutely.
Yep, them's the breaks. We have to go with what happens. There's not too much that we can do.
No.
Now on the cyber attack front, we just continue seeing dramas, and some of the ones recently, one of the biggest law firms from Australia impacted. HWL Ebsworth, so hundreds of their clients, including dozens of government agencies in Australia impacted. We saw PWC and EY sort of tied in there as well with these cyber attacks linked to the MOVEit software. So it's just I guess another day, another hacking, but you kind of got to think we can maybe do better on some of these things, but it is also getting harder. I think the latest New Zealand government report is showing quite a strong uptick in the number of cyber incidents impacting huge. New Zealand. Yet there some organisations are still seem reasonably relaxed or moving quite slowly to secure themselves.
Yeah, and it's a super interesting kind of topic to understand, because cyber attacks are going to go up in especially with the sort of AI space. It's becoming a lot easier to get through a process. And what you understand is a cyber attack doesn't necessarily mean someone's hacked your password. There are other ways that cyber attacks can occur. Like I was mentioning in that story earlier on, where a friend of mine, they reset his Google password, which rang his mobile phone, left a voicemail message on his phone. They hacked his voicemail password to get the reset his PIN, and send an email to his accountant to transfer $50,000. Well, that's a cybercrime, and that occurs, so easily. So, I can't remember the number, but two-factor. Who has two-factor on? Not many people, unless you're forced to turn it on in the process, right? Unless you've got a iCloud account or a Google account where you have to have it in place. So cybercrimes. If someone wants to get into your business, they'll find the weakest point. So it's really important to have a clear idea of what your cybersecurity needs to be. Really clear idea. And companies like AWS and Google have a suite of tools and a suite of things that can really help your business understand. We go through what we call at Adroit, we go through the FTR review once a year, where we get Amazon to independently audit our security. We also have a security company called Few that does a full set of security packets that we go through, and we do a little bit of penetrative testing. We definitely spend a bit more on cybersecurity because we have to. We don't want to be the Bluetooth fish tank that stole the $60 million, right? So, so cybersecurity, especially now, should be top of mind for any business, whether you're small, medium, large, enterprise, government. Cybersecurity is really important, and all it takes is one weak link.
There's a new program that's just come out on TVNZ. You've been scammed. Looks to be a good watch. I just saw a little bit of it last night, and covers off a whole lot of sort of scenarios, but good education, so that's really accessible, and good to get your family members and so on watching. And it's the sort of content that can make a real difference to New Zealand, because it's really really friendly and accessible content. Nigel Latter, I think does a good job of
yes, he does.
Making it easy for people to get their head around
totally right.
a subject that often is just like, I don't want to learn about that stuff. But good education wrapped up in entertainment. So really, really pleasing to have that content coming through. Just also on the sort of cyber front, we heard about Reddit hackers demanding a $4.5 million US ransom and requesting API pricing changes. So this is we got the hacktivist type of scenario. And I think we will continue to see these sorts of things where disgruntled parties or those that aren't happy with the direction an organisation is taking, will use hacking as part of their mix. And of course, with these scenarios, they're not necessarily just coming from outside. There can be people, internally who disagree with how an organisation is operating and can help facilitate these things. So, we will continue to have, I think, some challenging times ahead.
Absolutely.
Probably time we drill in and hear a little bit more around Adroit. Maybe you could give a little bit of background of how things started out and where you are now.
Sure. Well, Adroit's 9, almost 10 years old now. So we started back in 2014. We were actually founded in Germany, of all places, with a friend of mine. And my background prior to that is building automation. I used to work for Bang & Olufsen doing a lot of the installation stuff, and was always frustrated by why two devices can't talk to one another. So the idea of where the company started was where IoT is now, basically a language translator, making everything standardized so that when one thing talks to another thing, there's a really, clear understanding between those two devices. And that's how the Adroit started. It was called Juicebox originally. And we rebranded about 6 or 7 years ago. And we, through the way, were involved in bringing existing protocols. There are things like Modbus and BACnet, and these are all things that exist on all the devices that we have in our life today, our cameras, our TVs, everything has one of these protocols in it. And, how do we take those, which are currently not live real-time systems, they report into an internal network, internal automation network, and how do we take those and make them field ready and put them out in the middle of nowhere where they can be remote and not have to rely on big power supplies and big technology and that kind of stuff.
And I guess the continued improvement, miniaturization, lower power requirements, all of these sorts of things play into this world of the Internet of Things, these connected devices. So even over that period that you've been operating, ongoing continuous improvement.
CI/CD type styles.
So what would you say are sort of the typical problems that Adroit sets out to sort of help solve for the New Zealand organisations that you work with? What are some examples?
So think about water monitoring in a river. Our riverways unfortunately have a long way to go before they're back to a good state. People are swimming in them and getting sick. And the current state of play is a person goes to a site and takes a glass jar of water and closes off and sends it off to the lab, and the lab does the result, and that result can take 5 days, 10 days to get the result. So the result is already behind in understanding. So then they take that and they put it into a model and, understand what's happening by, predicting a bit more in the future. So what the Internet of Things does is it allows us to take a real-time sensor, put it in the water, and then get real-time results measuring every 5 minutes and understanding what the trend analysis is and seeing differences.
Wow, so that's night and day difference, isn't it? When you can get instant
100%.
Data basically as often as you want,
absolutely,
versus what could take multiple days
or months in some cases too.
And if it's water quality, this is the sort of thing that can save lives or
health and safety.
On one end, it can lead to that. On the other end, if a waterway, had been having issues. You could open it up for use a lot quicker.
Absolutely.
If the data's, come back clear, over whatever period of time. To give that confidence, right?
Or
so
you can
really speed things up.
Or you can find something. So, from a health and safety perspective, you're not allowed to go into the field and get a grab sample when it's pouring with rain because it might flood and there's a bit of a health and safety risk.
Yep.
So when you have a sensor in place during a flood event, you actually can see the data during the flood event and understand what's happening when that flood event happens. And you're not having to predict what's happened, how much sediment went down, how much E. coli came down, what was the runoff from the farm, all these questions that sometimes can't be answered because it's too difficult to get there.
Yeah.
We can now get there because the technology is already in the waterway or on the site or wherever it is in the process.
Yeah.
But also it's bringing the intelligent people, the water scientists who would be the ones, or the hydrologists who would be the ones going and doing these grab samples, actually giving them better data to work with. There are a lot of challenges around collecting the data, of course. The sensors in the field, get affected by environmental effects themselves. They get affected by the amount of sediment in the water or a bug or a leaf or an eel. I had my finger bitten by an eel.
Oh, really?
I caught like a 2 meter long eel. I flicked it up in the air. We just stopped filming. We were doing this little video shoot. That was quite a funny thing.
You didn't grab it and cook it up?
No, well, it was attached to my finger, and then as I got halfway through, it came off, sliced my finger open. That was a bit of fun, and then it ended up slippering back into the river.
Oh, okay. So no smoked eel for dinner.
No smoked eel for dinner. Okay. Sorry about that. Next time I'll get one, I'll bring it up to you, Paul. So we understand that there's a level where we have to look at, using AI tools to understand what state the sensor's in at that time. Yeah. Is the sensor dirty? Is it clean? If it's dirty, we need to get a technician out there. Is the data, if the information was okay for 2 or 3 weeks and wasn't really mission critical, is it so important to go and clean it, or can I wait for the next cycle? Or in some cases, we're working with Watercare at the moment, looking at an E. coli sensor, and it's really important part of a process. So it needs to be accurate all the time. So we need to make sure if it is dirty that we detect it's dirty and we clean it. So there are some challenges like that.
And I guess as the cost on the technology comes down, it becomes easier to have a level of redundancy as well, doesn't it? So
Absolutely.
You've got multiple sensors that you're comparing the data off each of them, and if one drops out, then it's less of a drama. But
absolutely, and inside of a catchment, say you've got a water catchment going into the Waikato River, you might have a sensor network. So you might have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sensors in a space of 10 square kilometres or something like that.
Yeah.
The more granularity, if you find out where there are issues, you can then trace back where those issues are coming from. There was a story, it's not a New Zealand story, it's an overseas story, but a sensor manufacturer found a farmer pumping effluent into the river, but he had installed his pipe at the very bottom of the river so no one would ever see it. And he turned the pumps on at midnight, not during the day, so no one saw where it was coming from. And they were able to use the sensor to trace back where it was coming from. Right. So that technology was able to help them, ascertain where the issue was coming from in the process. Right.
That's brilliant.
Being in real time.
So when it's happening and where it's happening.
Absolutely, and we're doing other things. In the field, we've got a number of geotechnical products that we're bringing to market at the moment. Geotechnical products are wells and bores. So understanding the groundwater levels, which they use from a construction perspective. We don't have any mines here, but in Australia, lots of mining. But I didn't realise there's like 2,000 or 3,000 dip bores in Auckland alone. If you walk down the street, you see these little tiny round copper brass lids that say bore monitor, and underneath there is a bore, and they're in the middle of the street. You walk down Queen Street and they're all over the place.
Wow. And
the likes of like Tonkin Taylors, they would go out and dip the meters every now and then to get an understanding of what their water level is. So by putting some technology, and that's now done on an hourly basis, so we know what the water levels are doing all the time, and they can then use that data and make better informed decisions about things, issues like liquefaction, which is obviously something that was really big down in Christchurch. There's those kind of things that we can solve.
It's really cool.
I can talk about this all day long.
So what would be another sort of, another New Zealand example that you've been involved in that might be of interest to listeners?
Sure. So Christchurch City Council is currently doing a trial of 4 sensors through the Avon River and some of the Riccarton drains and things that feed into the Avon River.
Old stomping ground.
Your old stomping ground, yeah. So it's really interesting because technology, the way that councils and businesses still see it is the grab samples are the way that they currently do it. So bringing technology in has to change policy, has to change things that go around how the government see the environment should be tested. So we're doing a trial down there at the moment through the Avon River, which has been a really good trial. It's been going on for about 4 or 5 months. So that's been really useful, and that's been really helpful for us to understand our technology better as well, because we're working with the council. So there's a lot more need for quality assurance in that process. So we were able to, go through a better QA process and understand how the sensors work a bit better than we did already. And we started partnering with companies like Hills Laboratories, who have been really an important part of our process, where we've taken our technology through a lab and made sure that the accuracy we have within our sensors is what we say the accuracy is of the sensors, which helps get the government departments on board.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? Because if you go from taking samples and then they're going back to a lab, then the results you're going to get off that, say, compared to a sensor, it's completely different. Technology.
Totally.
And so, they're not necessarily going to directly correlate or line up in exactly the same way.
Yes, they can do. It's very interesting. Like some of the things I've discovered is water is no different to clouds. You can have 10 centimeters of water, and the different measurements come out of those 2 different pieces of water.
Yeah.
So the water is constantly changing as it's picking up sediment and dirt and DNA from animals and bugs and stuff. So it's constantly changing through the whole process. So with this E. coli sensor, what we've got is we've for example, we've now pinpointed it down to a finite process where we put the sensor in the water and we measure the sensor with the grab sample to the second the sensor takes the sample within 30 centimeters, and then get that to the lab. And we've actually been finding the results are very, very close.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
So we've been going through that kind of process to make our products better, to make the technology better.
Yeah. And I guess we will see a range of new sensors kind of coming out over the years ahead. I don't know who's working on that stuff, whether anybody in New Zealand is actually building and inventing those sensors, but that's quite a key to all of this, isn't it? We've got sensors that can measure all the right sort of things quickly and on an automated basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the sensors that we're seeing now in the field, some of them are going for, have been around for 25, 30 years. Some of them, been around for 5 or 6 years. We do have a local New Zealand company, Lincoln Agritech, make a groundwater nitrate sensor called the Hydrometrics. So it is a New Zealand company, and it is now on the global stage. So they do exist. And these sensors are continuously being improved in the process. So, 5 years ago, the Hydrometrics to the Hydrometrics today, the firmware is, 200 or 300 firmwares further on. It's more accurate. It's more forgiving. It does it better. Same with all the technology that exists out there. It's a constant improvement process. It's my job to find those sensors, and it's my job to keep my ear on the ground. And it's my job to solve these kinds of problems. From construction perspective, measuring dust, noise, and vibration, really important on construction sites. Have been relatively expensive and hard to reach for some construction companies, where we're able to bring a noise meter to market for $7,000. So it makes it a lot easier for a construction company to monitor their state of compliance, to know where they sit, so that they don't get complaints from the people around them, so they can be in a really good state.
Yeah, that's good. And so for you and your team, what does the future look like? What sort of scale are you at now? You've had investment in recent years. Spark are now it's a pretty major shareholder, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we've got I think it's 18 staff now in total. We're based in Freeman's Bay. If anyone ever wants to pop in and see what we're doing, feel free to hook us up. we got investment from Spark about a year ago, so they came on board as an investment partner, which enabled us to, also gain access to some of the larger markets that as a small company we weren't able to access. Work with the Fletchers and Winstones and Firth Concrete, some of those larger companies. So it's been a really, really, really cool growth. We're definitely going to see the next 9 months is going to be a very big growth for us, especially in the construction space. Construction's our biggest growing section at the moment. We've just released an entire range of portable monitoring kits inside of Pelican cases, effectively. So ease of access, a little IoT device that you go and put on a tripod in the middle of nowhere, and it just works. And we're also, from a technical perspective, we're looking at integrating into satellites a lot more for those really hard to reach spaces where the Spark network isn't there yet because there's no need for it to be there. So it means we're able to go in the middle of nowhere and put a sensor and run it there and leave it there for 5 years and it will keep on working. So
saw the news recently. Spark have got their satellite option coming on stream.
Very close
as well. So they've got the deal. The deal's been done, which is great.
Yeah. So they've got there's a network called, I don't know if you've heard of. I don't get too technical. NB-IoT. It stands for Narrowband IoT.
Right.
It's a very small portion of a cell phone network. That enables a slightly further reach, a more, can sort of penetrate through concrete layers and stuff. There's a company in Spain that we're looking at being a part of the trial for. They are doing NB-IoT from satellites, so it will automatically roam. The same SIM card that Spark give you will roam to a satellite or a cell phone tower.
Amazing.
Automatically. So there's some pretty cool tech out there now.
Well, I look forward to how all of that develops. It's great. Keeping
my ear to the ground all the time. I love this tech.
Great to catch up again, Oric. Really cool, and we'll certainly look forward to an opportunity to have you back on New Zealand Tech Podcast in the future and get some further updates as things progress.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me on the NZ Tech Podcast, Paul.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
A real pleasure. Well, thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Big thank you to our show partners, to Gorilla Technology, 1NZ, HP, Spark, and 2 Degrees. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next week.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.